I love wearing this hat when we're talking about the Cowboys. Anyways, now we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm wearing my cowboy hat, and that's because the Cowboys are going to end up playing the Texans, and they're going to be playing in Dallas. And fun fact, Jake Paul already has more wins in the Cowboys Stadium than the Cowboys do in this entire season. Isn't that unbelievable? But of course it's not, because it is just Dallas. That is just what they do. This is their expectations. Everyone knows that Dallas is just disappointing. And look at that Cowboy. Look at him. He's so sad because he knows that the Cowboys, they're going to end up losing in this matchup. I have the Texans winning this game. Now, the Texans, they do have a couple of injuries. It doesn't really seem like CJ Stroud has been playing really well. Having mediocre receivers and having a mediocre line. And despite this, however, I still think that the Texans are going to prevail. This is sort of like a get-right game for Houston. Going off of their last few games, they ended up dropping a game to the Jets. CJ Stroud did not play all that well in this matchup. I mean, he threw 11 completions. He threw 30 passes and only got 11 completions and ended the game with 191 yards. And against the Lions, he ended up dropping an egg in this matchup, despite the fact that Jared Goff turned into Jared Goof, throwing 5 interceptions in this game. The Texans still were able to lose, and they did not score a single point in the entirety of the second half. They got completely shut out, and that was a very bad game coming in from CJ Stroud. And, I mean, you could argue that it was a bad game coming in from Jared Goff, who turned into Jared Goof as well. In fact, not even argue, it was a bad game. But the Texans, they've had some pretty stinker performances with CJ Stroud. Against the Packers, he only threw for 86 passing yards, which is really, really bad. But at the end, they ended up losing to the Packers, of course. But this is sort of their get-right game against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the Cowboys, they are shorthanded, and not in the usual sense, because, I mean, the Cowboys, they're really bad this season. They have been awful. They have yet to win a single game at home. I don't really expect them to win a game at home this season. Actually, yes, I do expect them to win a game at home, and that is going to be against the Giants on Thanksgiving. I completely expect them to win that game because, let's face it, the Giants, they're not going to win that game. I don't think they're going to win that game. But regardless, CJ Stroud, he's been very, very underwhelming in these last few games. And you can make an argument it's because he doesn't have all that much talent in the receiving area. The O-line has been a little bit mediocre. But against the Cowboys, again, this will be his get-right game. Now, the Cowboys, they're also shorthanded. They do not have their star-studded future quarterback with Dak Prescott. Remember this guy? Yeah, Dak Prescott slid against the 49ers, ended up losing to the Packers in the playoffs. We love Dak. He always just disappoints the Cowboys and their hopes and their dreams. And, I mean, he always beats the Giants, which is why I can't stand him. But aside from that, he always ends up just ruining the hopes and the dreams of all of the Cowboys fans in the end, eventually. And he did so earlier in this season. He went down with a season-ending injury. I'm not saying that I like the fact that he got injured, but again, it's just a little bit funny considering how they recently signed him to the most expensive quarterback contract ever signed, and now he decides to get injured. So it's a little bit ironic, and it's not funny that he got injured. What's funny about it is the timing of when he got injured. That's the funny part about it. But I don't think any player that gets hurt is a funny matter, despite that the fact that it's Dak Prescott. But again, these quarterbacks for the Cowboys, they're not that good. I mean, we saw both of them play in the matchup against the Eagles, where they ultimately ended up losing, and we got sad Cowboy over here to represent the fact that the Dallas Cowboys ended up losing. Cooper Rush, again, we know that he's not a good quarterback. We know that he's not a long-term starter. He only threw for 45 yards in this matchup. He did not throw interceptions, but again, 45 yards is just absolutely horrible. and he did complete 13 of his 23 pass attempts, but we did get a Trey Lance sighting in this matchup. And of course, he threw an interception. 4 for 6 on completion percentage. Well, 4 for 6 in passing attempts in passes made to passing attempts, and he threw for 21 yards. So again, very lackluster performance coming in from the Cowboys at home. But despite that pitiful performance, I think the Cowboys should start Trey Lance. And I'll explain why. We already know what we're going to get with Cooper Rush. We already know he's not a solid enough quarterback to win you games. And Trey Lance, we haven't really seen a team that has given him a chance. And with Dallas right now, what does Dallas have left to lose? I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs at this rate. And chances are they're not going to be a good team going into the future. So just see what Trey Lance can do and give him a shot. Like, give him a shot to be a starting quarterback in this league. I mean, a lot of people, I remember all of the hype around Trey Lance with the 49ers, and then he ultimately ended up not living up to the hype. But it's lucky that the Niners ended up getting Brock Purdy. But again, I think that we should just see what Trey Lance can do. Like, give him a solid chance to play some decent snaps and see what he can do as a starter. Again, he did not play well in the last matchup, so maybe this will all be just a flop, and maybe he actually isn't as good as people, or he isn't as good as people really predicted him to be. I mean, he was just a really big disappointment for the Niners. It's ironic how they traded all their picks and then they ended up drafting him high, and he did not end up being the same player that a lot of people expected him to be. But they got lucky that they ended up getting Brock Purdy in that draft instead. But regardless, the Cowboys are going to lose. I'm fully confident that the Cowboys are going to lose in this matchup. And just because I say that now, I can just feel it, that somehow they're going to end up winning. But besides that, I mean, Houston is 7-point favorites in this matchup against Dallas. And I mean, I just don't see the Cowboys winning in this game. Not only do they play at home and they haven't won a home game at all this season, same with the Giants, they also haven't won a home game at all in this season, but against the Texans, while they are rather injured, they do still have a really solid team, and they have a much more competent quarterback than Trey Lance and Cooper Rush. I mean, if you want to compare the two, the three actually, CJ Stroud with Cooper Rush and Trey Lance, everyone is going to pick CJ Stroud as their quarterback as opposed to picking Trey Lance and as opposed to picking Cooper Rush. I mean, maybe Dallas Cowboys fans are going to pick Cooper Rush or Trey Lance just because they're Cowboys fans and, they don't really know how to think sometimes. But aside from that, I just don't expect the Cowboys to win. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you guys think that Dallas is going to prevail? Do you guys think that they're going to finally end up winning a game? I don't think so. That's the reason why I have this Cowboy hat on. And I mean, it's going to be a great game. I really think it's going to be a great game to watch because Dallas is going to get absolutely owned at home. I really hope that the Texans can prevail and win this matchup. But that's all that I have on this segment, and that's it for the show. So thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something that you've just been dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, I recommend using Super Chat. Just click on the $sign below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. If Super Chat's not really your thing, then you can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way as well. That's all that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and how about them Cowboys? I hope they lose, but tune into the game tonight, and as always, take care.